Welcome to this next video, which is also about projects, tasks, and timesheets. Although the last time I actually did a video about the invoicing part. So you've got a project, a task, a timesheet, and you invoice your time. So that's on the billable side of the project. Excuse me, but there's also a costing bit involved. And you want to keep track of that because if you don't, then you don't know if your project was profitable or not. Now, the way to there's two ways to look at this. Under the project, it keeps track of all your costs, so that's fine. But those costs are only reflected, especially the timesheet part, once the payroll is done. And I'll show that to you. And then once you've done the payroll, it actually reflects in your salary account on your chart of accounts. So you can see your costs under your project sheet, but it doesn't reflect in your accounting system unless you do a pay slip. Just want to run through a few things, yeah? So you've got a project, more than one task, and each task has got more than one timesheet. From the timesheet, you generate a payroll, but for that whole process, you need an activity. For an activity, you need an activity type. This is quite important because in the activity type, it gives you the ability to select the default rate for your billing hours and your costing hours. All right, so that's quite important. Your payroll generates a pay slip, and of course, based on the pay slip, the journal entries are done. When it comes to this, I'll show you the journal entry. You can actually select which account you want to use. It's actually quite important. Typically, you'd use it from the salary account, but I've, was debating the possibility of actually using another account. Salary account, your monthly employees. But if you've got a situation where somebody does a subcontracting work for a day or two or three, and you want to keep those costs or log those costs in a different account, then you've got the ability to do that. I'll show that where you set that account. Another thing that I need to run through quickly is the HR structure. Every company has got, a company's got more than one branch, and then each branch has got more than one department. Each department has got more than one employee. I don't have extra arrows here. It would just have clobbered things up. But I think you can see that. Then you've got your employee. You also have an employee grouping, which I don't really use. So for an employee, you really need a grade, a department, a branch, and a designation. If you go and look at the employee creation, we'll look at it now, then you'll see you need those. For a grade, you need a leave policy, and for a leave policy, you need a leave type. Also, for a grade, you need a salary structure, and for a salary structure, you need a salary component. And that ACC, that's where you set that account that you want to use for that particular payroll run. And then, of course, your employee does a leave application, and there's a leave allocation. Just a moment to pause here. You'll see that there's a lot of prerequisites, and you can draw similar diagrams. I like drawing these diagrams because it makes me at least understand how these things fit together. In the manufacturing, all over you can draw these diagrams where these are prerequisites. If you want to create an employee, you need a grade, but to create a grade, you need a leave policy. But for a leave policy, you need a leave type. What am I trying to say? Have a look at your situation and define or identify these prerequisites and set them up beforehand. So once you get to creating an employee, everything is in place. Now this, of course, necessitates the fact that you spend a lot of time setting up ERPNext, your initial settings. But once it's set up, then of course you just run. What I did is I kept a spreadsheet of all the possible settings required. And whenever I do an ERPNext setup, I set up these things for a company, letterhead, default accounts, warehouse types, warehouses, warehouse accounts, those types of things. Okay, I think without further ado, let's dive into this. All right, so for a project, I'm going to create a new project. Let's say test 17, just some name. Edit and full page. When do we expect? It's not from a template. You can create a project template if you've got a standard type of project. You keep on building the same type of building or capital project, whatever the case may be. Expected start date for this project, let's say the beginning of the month, end of the month. Project type, there's an internal and an external, but you can create new project types if you've got capital project or whatever the case may be. I'm just going to stick to internal. Percentage completion method. I like to use manual. If you use, for instance, task completion, once all the tasks for this project is completed, it automatically closes the project. I prefer that. Which department? Let's say it's a research and development. Right. Okay, you can add a customer detail, link users to it. And there, of course, this is a nice thing about this, is you can make notes. This is what the task is all about. We need to do this, prepare for this, buy that. And once the task is complete, you can actually, also make notes of what has happened, what has been done, etc. So that's quite nice. I think I've got everything right. Yeah. Yeah, this is the project. Sorry, I said task. But also, within the project and the task, both, you've got that notes, make notes feature where you can make notes. All right, so I create a task. Now, I like to use a naming convention that includes the date of the task. Let's say it was 23, and then some word, meeting, buying, or something that describes the type of activity. Maybe it's not applicable in your case, but when you look at the subject of the task, you immediately pick up a lot of information about dates or activities. Because you created the task from the project, it auto-fills that in. This issue is if the task is related to a support issue, which in this case it's not. What type of task is this? The activity. Remember we said this activity I keep on saying type. Activity and then activity type. So that was pre-set up. And if you go and look at activity type for meeting, I've already got the costing default set up there. This is a color for when you use Gantt charts. The color for this task, you can determine that. All right. Don't worry about this. This is not on your sheet. This is something I customized, added on. It gives me the ability to use the Gantt charting for production planning. We can talk about that later. All right, the timeline for this task is beginning on the 23rd and ending on the 23rd, because it's going to be a meeting on the 23rd. And then, of course, you can type details here about what the meeting is all about. Here you can link dependencies, for instance, build wall, but it depends on the bricks being delivered. In this case, it's not. There's nothing like this. All right, so there's our task created. All right, so there's our task for that project. Now, if we create it, well, first of all, we need to go and create an employee. All right, let's go to human resources, employee. Let's create a new employee. I'm just thinking up names, yeah. All right. Full-time, date of birth, 2005. 1st of January, whatever date of joining, let's say at the beginning of the year. Then, of course, you can add all the other things. It's not important. But here you need to say, all right, which department does this guy work for? Research and development. I've only got one grade entered here. Can you see here? You create all the grades, then they're all available. There's only one branch here. What designation shall we use? Let's say associate. Obviously, this doesn't make sense, but I'm just setting things. Yep, I think that's about it. Okay, so we've created an employee. Now we need to, and another important thing is if you do this type of payrolling, then of course you need to have a salary structure based on timesheets. All right, so I've created a salary component called timesheet component. It's an earning, all right, and this is important. This is where you set the default account. Now you see, I didn't select salary account. Typically, you'd select salary account here. I've created a services labor expenses account just to show if I want to log this separately or account for it separately, not log. This is where you set the default account. Maybe I should just quickly go and show you the chart of accounts. Typically, your salary is under indirect expenses. There's your salary account. But what I did is under direct expenses, I said service labor expenses, and I created that account. All right, so that's the account that I chose. Right, so that's the salary component. Then I've got a salary structure that I created called timesheet-based salary structure. All right, and there you list your earnings, and if there were deductions, you would add that as well. I created this beforehand because I just want to save some time. I don't want to make this video too long. So that's already created. Now, of course, if you look at our diagram, we've got our salary component where we've set our account, we've got a salary structure. Now we just need to assign it to that employee. So we say a salary structure assignment, and we create a new one. What's the employee called? Yani Yakaranda. There we go. Salary structure. We assign a time-based for it. Let's say from the beginning of January. These base values are just for salary calculations. It's not going to come in for timesheet based. I'm just filling some values in. Right, we're saving that and we submit that. So now we've got a salary structure assigned to our employee. And let's just have a look. Our task, I just want to keep track of what I've done here. So we've created the task, all right? But now we need to say, okay, well, there's a timesheet that gets generated because this task was completed. So you go to, let's just perhaps just recall a little bit here. We've got a project called Test 17. If you click on that, it lists the tasks for this. All right. So you've got the, excuse me. So you've got the project and the task. Now you need to create a timesheet for that particular task. All right, task. That's the one. All right, I need to create a timesheet. And it is for which company, if you've got more than one company. And of course, for the particular employee called Yani Yakaranda. All right, what activity we're going to have? We say it was a meeting. From which time on the 23rd, let's say from 7 o'clock in the morning. Early bird catches the worm, eh? To, let's say, 9 o'clock on the same day. So 7 o'clock on the 23rd, 9 o'clock on the 23rd gives you 2 hours. Somewhere there's also what you expected. I probably didn't fill that in. All right, now you'll know if you click the billing button, in other words, you're going to bill this. You'll notice that billing hours doesn't complete automatically. Initially, I didn't like that, but speaking to some people and thinking about it, it does make sense because, I mean, if you build a wall, for instance, and it takes you 4 hours, but half hour of that was spent fixing your wheelbarrow's wheel because that broke. You feel you don't want to charge the customer for that, then of course you can have, let's say, 4 hours there and you can only bill 3.5. It just gives you the freedom. In this case, we're just going to stick to 2. These are auto-completed because obviously you generate this timesheet from within your project tasking structure. Here you can see this rates have been automatically picked up. I must make a note just to show you where that's set, but it's under activity type in the meeting. There's 2 fields. You set these, the billing rate and the costing rate. Sorry. Where does this frog come from? All right, and this task is complete. Yeah, we've got everything. Yep, that's it. That's my timesheet for that activity. I submit it. Okay, cool. So let's just recap a little bit. So I've got a project, I've had a task, and I completed that task. I filled in a timesheet. Now we need to do the payroll run. I've already linked the salary structure to this employee. All right. So now we go to HR and we say do a payroll entry. Now remember we had associate, eh? Let's just double check. This is the role for this guy. Associate. You'll see where that is important now. Okay, so we do under payroll, we do a payroll entry. We create a new one and we say this is going to be a monthly payroll, whatever the case may be. Now you set the filters for which employees do you want to pay. Do you just want to pay all the managers or all the analysts, or do you want to pay, well, this is an associate. Where is it? Associate. This is where it's important. You want to pay that particular employee, so you pay all the associates. Or do you pay all the associates in this particular branch? Or do you pay all the associated in this particular branch, in this particular department? And so you can filter. I'm just going to stick to one filter. All the associates are going to be paid. And you tick this, very important, salary slip based on timesheet. You pick a start date because you said it's monthly. You selected monthly. All right, and for which project was that? That was test 17. And which bank account eventually it's going to come from. Yep, everything. Yeah, all right, so we save that. Now, of course, you click Get Employees, and it fetches all the employees that conforms to this criteria. All right, and now you say create salary slips. It creates a salary slip. There you can see it, and you say submit the salary slip. This will submit salary slips and create a journal entry. Okay, yes, I want to do that. And it says salary slip submitted for this period. It wanted to send an email. There's no email set up, so it's not a problem. Right, so the journal has been created. Let's go to, our accounting module, and we say journal entry. And there you can see that's the one that was just created now, the payroll journal entry. And there you can see it actually debited the services labor account with 60 Rand, and it credited the payroll payable account with 60. Okay? You need to take away, you need to credit the payroll payable account, and you can see it's 60. It was 2 rand, 2 hours at 30 rands an hour. Okay, ridiculous figures. I just thumbsucked stuff. All right. And of course, if you set the default account to salary, that would now be salary account. Now, of course, you can just create a journal entry to, where's my chart of accounts? That account has now been credited. And now, of course, for the correct bank account to reflect the transaction, you have to do another journal, but you do that yourself. All right, where you say, where you say you debit the payroll account, and of course you credit the bank account then, because you take away from the bank account, you credit that. All right, so that'll be a journal entry to say debit this account, so this account will be 0 again in balance, and you credit the bank account because your bank account becomes less. If you credit the bank account, your bank account gets less. All right, and that physically would be then the bank transaction for your payroll. All right, and of course then if you look at your chart of accounts, under your service expenses, you can see the where's the you can see the entry here. All right. Okay, and your costs have been accounted for in your accounting structure. That's what I wanted to share with you. Obviously, this is the way I used it. I'm sure there's a few changes that you can make that suits your situation, but I'm sure it'll kickstart you to get your costs accounted in your accounting structure.